The old Keese Barn. And back in segregation, this was the only place in this community where an African American could sit down and be served a hot meal.
My name is Selena Peppers. I remember this place when I was a child, at Keese, when it was a cafe and antique shop. And you know, there was the only cafeteria that we could come to. And my sister-in-law worked in here once, you know, in the cafeteria. So I am familiar with this place because we used to pass by this place going to school.
So the place was falling apart, and 5 years ago, Jori Erdmann's studio, they came out here and disassembled the barn. It was falling down. And they took the wood and they stacked it up, and they designed this memory cube to preserve the memory of the place that was very sacred to the community. Down this path, what this does is it frames a view towards the community center, and this path frames a view of downtown. So this is the original wood, and they assembled it in a way to show age by using the original wood, cast iron steel. The steel's telling a story by rusting, and the wood's telling a story by rotting. And to most people, that doesn't make very much sense, but to an architect, as we watch things go away and change in age, we find it very intriguing. But the problem with the site was that the community didn't really understand this because there's no sign. So what we did for this project is there were some things left undone. This porch was supposed to be done 5 years ago. It's the porch to the community. We did everything obviously as a community project. But one of the things that we incorporated is this concrete sign that'll be embedded with photographs and with text. And it's designed in a perspective where if you read it, from this angle, it reads park. If you go on the opposite side and read it coming back this way, it says Keese, which is the name of this street and also the name of the barn. By using concrete, as you can see the voids left out in the concrete, there'll be images of original Keese, the people that actually used to use the Keese Park or the Keese Barn. And what we tried to do was turn it into from a weird architecture project that the community didn't understand into a park. Is what the theme of this is. So try to make it a little bit more understood for a community sense instead of just architecture.
Call it Keese Park. It's kind of changed the perception of the site because I think some of the residents in the neighborhood are a little disappointed at the fact that the barn's not here anymore, even though the architecture seeks to kind of memorialize it. So we wanted to try to rebrand the site and use architecture as a way of rebranding it. So by calling it Keese Park, it doesn't call attention to the fact that the barn's not here. It calls to the fact that this is a place of gathering. So that's why we're calling it Keese Park. This part of the porch is footed on pen foundations. Pen foundations are really temporary. They're really easy to remove. Two people can pull one out and move it in about two minutes. On the front side of the porch, the posts are set in concrete. So you have the original porch structure sits on concrete plates and it's kind of a more permanent detail. And the back half of the porch sits on a more temporary detail. So it kind of calls into question like what this space is. Is it temporary? Is it permanent? But what we found is that the porch has always been a more permanent element of the site, while this part of the site has always been changing. It's changed programs, it's changed owners, it's changed functions. The original porch structure sits on concrete plates and it's kind of a more permanent detail. And the back half of the porch sits on a more temporary detail. So it kind of calls into question like what this space is. Is it temporary? Is it permanent? But what we found is that the porch has always been a more permanent element of the site, while this part of the site has always been changing. It's changed programs, it's changed owners, it's changed functions. So we also wanted to kind of embody that in the detail. So you can see how it kind of sits lightly on these feet. So you have in section, you have permanent versus kind of more temporary.
I want to thank Studio South Jori Erdmann and her leadership with her student group that in erecting another addition to this park site. I think it's significant in the fact it makes the facility more usable. I envision having some farmers markets down here, some oratory, Maybe this will be your stop, where you have your stop meetings and stop speeches made. I really appreciate the efforts of the students, and hopefully it inspires some more studio projects in the future, because it's an ongoing project. And I really appreciate your contribution to the memory of the Keese Barn, or the 100.